What's good, Relocation Football League fans? It's your boy Smitty. I'm trying to move this camera around. I don't know why it's over there. Yeah, it's your boy Smitty, RFL commissioner and play-by-play commentator here, bringing back the RFL podcast. You know what that means. Season is getting close. The RFL draft was lit. And now we're going to go over some things that you can see from the title. Let me see if I can get that up here. We're going to go over some things. First, we're going to talk about the big moves and stuff that took place, of course, right on time for that instrumental to go ahead and turn off. But big moves that happened right before this podcast a few days ago. Marquise Washington, Gino Gannon getting moved off to thoughts and everything on that we'll be discussing. We also have this official start date for when Season 9 will begin for the RFL, so that's going to be a great time. We also have the official release date for the RFL Modern, which we'll be pushing out for you guys to be able to use if you have PCs. And, you know, I got to get with my guys that's been with me working on that entire project so that way we can get that rolled out right before the season starts. And then we're going to go ahead and do the draft recaps. When we talk about the draft recaps, man, I graded every team. So every team has been graded, and we're going to go from the top draft, the teams that drafted well, to the worst ones. So we're just going to go in that order. And then, of course, when we go through the draft, it's just going to be an open discussion leading into open questions with you guys on who we think might be offensive and defensive rookie of the year for this upcoming season in each conference. With that being said, again, shout out to the guys that are here. And let's get into it. So, of course, diving into the big news, man. Marquise Washington, Gino Gannon getting traded from the Cougars and the Aviators. We all know these two quarterbacks from being the first ever huge storylines coming out of the first ever college series. You know, just to reiterate what the storyline was, it was a big storyline even then when they were in college. Originally, these two were on the same team. This stemmed from, I don't think it was the long shot, but it was something like that, I guess, afterwards. But this stemmed from when you got to be able to create your team after the long shot stuff with Devin Wade and stuff. Gino Gannon was a creative player that the community came up with the name with, and then we just went with the build, whatever the game had at the time. That was where his attributes starting out as a rookie. So that at first, these two were on the same team at LSU, and injury happened. Of course, that was a storyline of Madden at the time. And then when the injury happened, Gino Gannon was able to, of course, win a national championship within that mode, right? And so you technically counted. I believe it was Texas that they were able to stomp and get that championship. And then Marquise Washington, he got to get a red shirt kind of year, gray shirt, I guess you can call it, year where he got to play an extra year. And because of the success of Gino Gannon at LSU, that's where the college series first stemmed from, which was Gino Gannon and Marquise Washington starting at LSU, where Washington went on to transfer to Florida. And Florida was the original school that he was supposed to go to until he transferred to LSU, having Gino Gannon sit behind him for 4 years. So that was like the big storyline. We opened up the college series back up in 2019 with that. LSU and Florida both made the national championship game, taking one of the two of the four spots. Gino Gannon ended up getting eliminated in the first round. Marquise Washington ended up going to the national championship, ultimately losing to the national champions, which was Trevor Lawrence and the Clemson boys at that time. So a huge storyline, and it was just like, man, these guys were just always neck and neck and competing. They got to play each other for the first time in a Florida and LSU game I can remember in week 1. And in that week 1 matchup, man, Marquise Washington and Gino Gannon battled to the end, and Gino Gannon was just able to edge him out by, I believe it was a field goal. I think it was like 27-24 or 30-27, one of those scores. Man, shout out to Darius Dollars, man. $100 donation says, let's start this pod off right, fellas. S9 here it is, man. We're almost there. I'm just, of course, diving into these big moves with these two quarterbacks, just talking about the history of these players and everything. But yeah, Marquise Washington and Gino Gannon, the first original big storylines coming out of college. And we all remember the rookie year that both of these guys had. Gino Gannon having an amazing rookie year until, of course, Daryl Johnson came along and was able to do better than that. But he, in his first year, was able to do something that Daryl Johnson could not do with the Explorers. Even with an undefeated season, he was able to win league MVP, brought home 4 awards. Gino Gannon was just that guy his rookie year. And it's just crazy to think that this guy is going now from the franchise after the tail end of his rookie contract. Same deal with Marquise Washington. Even though he didn't win the MVP, he was always in a running neck and neck kind of with Gino Gannon. And then we fast forward to now where both of these guys just became too expensive for both of their teams to afford, and it left no choice for the Cougars or the Aviators but to trade them off. Now, originally, we've been hearing a lot of news even beforehand about Gino Gannon getting traded off to go somewhere, period, because at the time, the GM, he was trying to figure out how he can make it work, but he knew the expenses were getting crazy. So likelihood he was looking to try to make a move. And his last year with the Cougars this past season was not a good one. Shout out to Jordan Granger for the $1 donation, man. Appreciate that. But his last year with the Cougars was definitely not a good one. Ended up having them be the 3rd overall draft pick for each round. That's how bad it got for the Chicago Cougars last year. And after that MVP season in his rookie year, he's just never lived up to that same type of play. His second year wasn't bad. Don't get me wrong. He did dominate more so passing than he did running. He was much more of a dual threat his rookie year. Almost had over 1,000 yards rushing too. Had 993 off the top of my head. I remember that because lucky number 7, he had 7s all over the place. Warden number 7 was 7 yards short of 1,000 yards, was 7 XP short of an upgrade. I remember all of that, man. But Gino Gannon, unfortunate end. Guy was requesting $335 million. And that equated to about, off the first year, if he was even able to get a contract like that, $55 million a year, and at the tail end, $65 million. That was just way too much money for the Chicago Cougars to afford. Of course, a lot of contracts on the Cougars was also expensive, and it really, even if it wasn't looking at it, chances of signing Gino Gannon with that ask with the $270 million salary cap of the RFL, it could not afford him. They just could not afford him, and he had to go after we saw that asking price. I mean, that he's going to get that with the Black Knights, which is why he got traded there, right? There was barely any teams that could afford these quarterbacks. And when you're looking at these two franchises in which they got traded to with the London Black Knights and the Dallas Desperados now, these guys, I mean, they barely have any big contracts. They have some star players. You could talk about Tavion Hall being a big player. Max Moore, he was traded for. Like, there really isn't much talent on these two teams. These quarterbacks are young. Gino Gannon is 24 years old. Marquise Washington is 25 years old, man. Shout out to the guys, man. Let's just get the love out here, man. $5 donation says, for the shout out, says Jordan Granger. Perk with the $5 donation as well. Rodney Goins. Hey, man, shout out to the RFL community. We strong here tonight, man. I definitely appreciate that, guys. But yeah, like, just diving into this, because we're going to get into some stuff, man, just really breaking it down. And now these guys being shipped off to the teams that they're getting to, it was a huge shock. A lot of people are regarding these two big trades as the biggest moves of all time so far in the RFL, in RFL history. Biggest trades ever, right? And of course, when you look at the caliber of these quarterbacks, even though Gino Gannon had the season he had, this guy, we know his capability. He's only 24 years old at a 95 overall, and that's really what shot him up. And he probably would have asked for more money. Actually, before he got toned down to superstar, he was still asking for $335 million. Marquise Washington, on the other hand, is just one overall less and one age and 1 year older than Gino Gannon. He's 25 years old, and he was requesting $318 million. And when you look at the Columbus Aviators, I thought this team would be able to afford him, but it was some huge contracts signed just this past year that just did not allow that to happen. and guys are getting 7-year contracts and stuff. Like, it was too big of contracts to be able to even think about signing Marquise Washington back. Definitely thought would have been able to keep him in Columbus, but that just simply was not the case, and he had to end up getting traded off. And again, to a team that could afford him, and the Desperados. He ends up getting a great backfield as he had there, and now St. Louis, going from 2K Kingston Kinney to Tavion Hall. Like, this guy is he's pretty much in the same boat now. Of course, weapons are a little bit, honestly, it's almost like the same boat, to be honest. But let's go ahead and get a look at this. I mean, no requests, no, there was no comment, no quote or anything coming from Gino Gannon. I mean, Marquise Washington from this, but it was one from Gino Gannon, as we read here. Wish things could have worked out, but it got I got to do what's right for me and my family. Chicago will always have a special place in my heart. Now I look forward to changing the culture in London. And I got to play the bell for the guys on social media when I posted this, really sitting up here thinking like, yo, these guys played this song. These guys, he can't talk. He ain't really say that stuff. I'm play the bell. Of course he can't say that. Of course he can't talk. It's a video game, my guy. He ain't got no user behind him. But yeah, that's the quote that came up with it. It makes sense because at the end of the day, we know why he left. There's too much money. Donations still coming in, man. Shout out to the guys, man. It says keep going. $5 donation for Perk. 5 from Lido, man. I appreciate y'all boys for real. But yeah, man. It's just crazy because no one expected this. I remember before I had to make the deal, I, of course, now being the GM and the controller of the CPU teams, I had to control the Cougars, and I went in the Cougars locker room, man, and I told him, I said, hey man, we can't afford Gino. He's got to go. And CP was sick. He was like, oh man, that's crazy. Because I mean, Gino was looking good on this Madden with the Cougars. I'm not gonna lie. He's actually looking really good with the Black Knights right now too. And we were like, as I was scouring through looking for where I could potentially move him, that's when I found out. I was like, hey man, the only guys who really could afford him right now is the Black Knights and the Desperados, the teams in which Marquise Washington went to. But another storyline tied into this, which I don't have a graphic for, is my guy, as you see him, the Samurai Nation, looking to get his way back in the RFL Discord, man. Jacob McCall. It made sense for the Cougars to make this move because if they kept Gino Gannon, it's pretty much like championship or bust. They weren't going to get there, man. So because of that, you got to get something for a guy of this caliber. And what did they get? They went on and traded out and got a quarterback who's been on the rise, who's had a pretty good career starting out with the London Black Knights, Jacob McCall, former Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback. And this guy's a stud, man. I don't think I seen guys were talking, saying like, man, they traded for Jacob McCall. Obviously, if we could have kept Gino, we would have kept him, right? But the thing is, Jacob McCall is a great trade-off. And the reason why he is because, for one, again, he's 2 years younger. And is a different style of quarterback. They ended up getting a first-round draft pick from the Black Knights this year and a second-round draft pick along with Jacob McCall next year. So Cougars got capital. They got a quarterback to build with the future that can really take over the place of Gino Gannon without asking for too much money. He's an 82 overall right now. He's got 2 more seasons. Do I see him winning any MVP to get crazy XP boost or anything like that? No, I don't see that. So I feel like he's going to be an affordable quarterback that the Cougars are going to be able to keep long term, and he's going to be able to deliver. When you look at Jacob McCall, this guy should technically be an 88 overall quarterback, but he's only an 82 overall quarterback because of his throw power. We know about the noodle arm, but the guy got accuracy. He's got accuracy, and we've seen him be able to still, without being able to throw the bomb. Sometimes he's been successful on throwing the bombs. He's like, Tua, got to throw it early to get it out there. But he has been able to still be successful with an 87 throw power. And I feel like he's going to mix really well with this with the Chicago Cougars offense. So it was a great win for both sides, man. And man, guys, just continue to push in here, man. Hey, bro, I appreciate you. Yanni getting in on the on the donation train, man. Man, for real, nah, I really appreciate y'all for this. Real talk, man. And then Perk says, bet Jordan put another 5. CP said, bro, go tear his ACL. Bro can go tear his ACL. That I was saying. CP was kind of sick about Gino Gannon having to go away. But, you know, he's definitely in high spirits now about Jacob McCall and what he's most likely going to be able to bring to this organization within his first season. Hodge again with the $10 donation. CP laughing his mind off. He says ACL or Achilles. Y'all really want him out bad. Then we got Jaws. Let me make sure I'm liking these donations though, man. I really do appreciate y'all for this, for real, man. Real talk. I don't think I can hit the like button on some of these, but make sure I go back and hit all these, man. Appreciate y'all, boys. We haven't even dove into all the stuff yet. Like I haven't even got turned yet. I'm just trying to be on my professional stuff right now, you know. Just talking about these guys. Definitely gotta like that 100 though. Shout out to Hodge though, man. But yeah. So it's so much to talk about with these two, man. I mean, just out of nowhere trade. Gino Gannon was expected. Marquise Washington really wasn't expecting. I seen the Aviators guys was very upset about that. Of course, you would have liked to probably trade for have traded him a little bit earlier to try to get a quarterback in this past draft. But to be honest, in my opinion, this draft really didn't have guys, many guys of that caliber for them to really be able to get for that. If you get what I'm saying, I think it works out better now for the Aviators getting what they got in return because, first of all, guys are talking about Kyle Bain. Kyle Bain was kind of trash last season. I ain't going to cap. He was kind of trash last season. But I feel like, again, I say this a lot. Certain Maddens make certain players ball, and some years they don't. It's almost like real life. Some years it's going to be a year, and some years it's not. You know, and I feel like Kyle Bain that year, this past season, it wasn't his Madden. It wasn't his year. The year before that, if you watch some Kyle Bain, dude was pretty decent, man. Him and Tavion Hall was tearing it up. Dudes was able to still keep the streak of the Desperados going to the playoffs, all that going. So to be honest, man, I think I might be sleeping a little bit on Kyle Bain. I'm not saying he's going to come out here, light it up, throw for over 300 yards consistently and stuff like that. But he's an extender. He can move, especially on his Madden. They're getting out of that pocket. And he's got a back that can carry the load. 2K. 2K can be on the ground, killing it all season long, bar injuries, because injuries is going to be a huge factor this year in RFL. But I really do feel that he's going to do a decent enough job to hold it down. He's 26 years old, 81 overall, in replace of a 25-year-old, 94 overall. And then you got him, you got a first-round draft pick this year, a fourth-round draft pick this year, a second and a third-round draft pick next year, including getting Bain for the trade-off, right? If Bain does an okay job, if he is a game manager, if he does enough for the Aviators, then the Aviators still can have a decent season. But they also now have ammo with these draft picks. And so it worked out great for both of these teams. It really did. It worked out great for the players involved. I'm looking forward to seeing what Gino Gannon and Marquise Washington are going to do. I'm looking forward to seeing what Jacob McCall is going to do there with the Chicago Cougars. I'm looking forward to see what Kyle Bain does if he shocks some people and actually has a solid season with the St. Louis Aviators, you know. But yeah, that it was crazy, but that's just what happened here. Guys just wanted way too much money, and it was money that they were worth. I understand, again, Gino did not have the season last year, and he got dropped down from an X Factor to a superstar. But at the end of the day, if you can't afford him, you got to trade him, right? You got to trade him. Can't just let a talent like that fall into free agency. Because for one, you're not even going to be able to bid for him in free agency because you already know you don't have the money. But best believe by like week 3, whenever these guys can sign contracts, Gino Gannon and Marquise Washington will have the highest contracts in RFL history. And that's without a doubt. I believe the highest contract right now in the RFL is about 319 million, something crazy like that. And I think that was signed by Red Dragons quarterback Anthony Savoy. So yeah, they're going to ask for more than that. So they're about to have the highest contracts in the RFL, that's for sure. And with that also being said, before moving on, I posed this question on social media of the RFL. I want to ask you guys here in the chat. I haven't really been able to look in. I was just going in, diving in, into these trades and stuff like that. But what do you guys think about this? Gino Gannon and Marquise Washington. First day of practice was today, and here goes of course, the images of them in practice. Who do you think out of these two quarterbacks will have the most wins for their team? I want to just ask you guys in the chat. Will it be Gino Gannon who wins more games for the Black Knights, or Marquise Washington who wins more games for the Desperados? See what you guys got going on. Said don't look at chat, Smitty. I don't see what's going on. Yeah, I haven't looked at the chat because, just diving in. Must be some crazy. You already know I'm going to go back and see what's going on in the chat, man. Oh, yeah, some boys about to get some reloads taken, it sound like. Yeah, I'm seeing them, and it's good. Gino Gannon, Marquise Washington, it's a good balance. It's really crazy, man. In my opinion, who I think would win more, it's still close. But I feel like the Desperados with Marquise Washington could win a little more. And this is why. With the division they're in compared to the Black Knights, the Black Knights got to deal with the Dublin Celtic Tigers, the Relo Bowl winning London Bulldogs, who just won this past season, and I don't know why I'm blanking on the other team. It used to be the Sentinels, but they're out of there now. And now it's the Brooklyn Bulls. That's what it is. So those are really tough teams for the Black Knights. But one thing the Black Knights did last season, they shocked us, man. They won half of their RFL games. They went six for 6. Ended the season 11-6. Of course, that's when we had all the wins. Thank God that's over with. And that's what Jacob McCall. Don't get me wrong, Jacob McCall's still a solid quarterback, but he's not Gino Gannon. Gino Gannon is more of a quarterback kind of built for the disaster that the Black Knights have up front on that line, right? They're not that good up front. This guy's going to need to run for his life. He's going to get sacked a lot. I can say that right now. I think he's going to get sacked a lot. But I also feel like he's going to create a lot of plays that they just naturally couldn't. He's got a stronger arm to be able to throw to those fast wide receivers. So he can really turn up this offense. I think the offense is going to be rocking. The Black Knights defense last year played better than expected, and I feel like they might do it again. I've been running some tests and everything with this team, and they're not looking too bad. Will they have the best of records? I'm not saying that, but I think they might still be a team that will shock people. That'll have people like, hey, we can't walk up in here in London and think it's going to be sweet like in the past. And again, Black Knights used to be a pretty solid team early on in RFL, but have dropped off really since the Holden Wolf era ended. But yeah, they might be back into prominence. But I'm liking the Desperados because, and Marquise Washington possibly winning more games because, again, I talked about how Marquise Washington had Kingston Kinney in the backfield, a 97 overall young back. He's got a 99 overall running back in Tavion Hall. So he's pretty much in the same situation. I feel he's got better receivers. He don't have a top receiver like Colt Cruz was for the Aviators. And even though, he had his off years, he played better when he was with the St. Louis Aviators. But this offensive receiving core as a whole is a little bit better for Marquise Washington, a better backfield. The offensive line isn't that great, but it also wasn't all that great either with the Aviators. So honestly, I feel like he's kind of in the same boat. I feel like Marquise Washington is more so in the same boat more than Gino Gannon, and that's why I think that Marquise Washington will end up winning more games this season than Gino Gannon. But with that being said, man, just wanted to dive into the trades and the reasoning behind the trades and stuff like that. Now, I'm still going to leave these up here for guys to debate. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk about, and I got these in notes just to make sure that I don't forget anything. Uh, the RFL season. So the RFL season will officially, and when I say the RFL season will begin, I mean the preseason. That's when you're going to start seeing RFL games. The RFL season will officially start up February 1st. That is 8 days away, guys. We're almost there. We are almost there. RFL content, the new era of the RFL is almost here. You guys already see the fire uniforms. You guys already seen the schedule. If you haven't seen the schedule already, a couple podcasts ago, I showed the the schedule for all teams. So you can go back and check that out. And of course, when those games will be played and all that stuff. I'm trying to work on seeing if I can knock all that out and possibly make that entire schedule for you guys by tomorrow. So it's going to be a lot of work, man. I know a lot of guys been trying to reach out to me, but I've been extremely busy, man. And you know, it is what it is. But I'm definitely going to make sure we're ready to rock by February 1st. Gotta get with my coaches, man. Coaches, we gotta have a meeting very soon, Friday or Saturday, something, because I gotta start recording games pretty much for the preseason for premier games early on, probably starting Tuesday. So things need to be in order by then. We need to get in a call, and everything needs to be hashed out. I think I gave a lot of good information where most of everything you guys need to do, you guys already know. So that's good, but we need to make sure that we have our meeting soon. And I will make an announcement about that. But yeah, February 1st, preseason, something we haven't had in 3 years, is coming back. We're going to see everybody play, man. I'm talking about guys who were drafted even 3 years ago who wish they could have been able to touch the field, but they couldn't because of preseason due to being in separate files. We couldn't do it. We didn't want to see them on NFL teams, and of course, it didn't make sense to create all of that. So the preseason is back, boys. I need to make sure I download applause button because that's one thing I'm forgetting. But yeah, preseason starts February 1st, and we're just rolling with RFL content from there. Now, we're working on the RFL mod, and there's going to be some things that aren't going to be 100% completely done by the time we drop it, but we want to drop it before the season because we want to have it be a start today RFL kind of thing. We want more people to learn about the RFL. We want more people to be able to play with the players, have a favorite player, just even, you know, actually playing a game with these guys, seeing our uniform, seeing everything, and being a part of it. And so that's a big reason as why we want to push this mod and make it public. I'm going to request to have a mod out for the Mad Mod community soon. I'm probably going to put a post out about that tomorrow. You guys make sure you go ahead and turn it up if you're part of the Mad Mod community. And I'm going to be making it public there. So that way we get some more people to learn about the league, being able to be a part of the league and everything, and just enjoy it and see what we got going on, man. So RFL mod, I am planning on dropping that the day before the season starts. So January 31st, I'm trying to get with my guys, try to make sure we got everything as clean as we possibly can get it up until the time we have until that date. And then of course we're going to work on a little subtle things and fixing things like that to make sure that we can have a complete RFL mod and redesign. But most of everything is good, man. It's a few things that we're just fixing, just little things here and there that's just like off that don't have the RFL logo, got the NFL logos and stuff on it. We're going to look to replace everything, guys. So that is going to be something that I know you guys are going to look forward to and love to have. You guys can see week to week, and we will be uploading the file to the actual season week by week by week and putting that out in the public for the Mad Mod community too, and those guys, so that way they can follow along with the league as well. So a lot of big stuff going on in the RFL. That's all I could say. We got everything done in terms of, like, we got fields, working on coaches, other small things and stuff like I said on the mod. Yeah, so we're looking to release that at the end of this month, guys. And let me go ahead and pull up messages. Okay, I see another donate. Appreciate that, Rodney. It says Go Steamers, $5 donation. And with that being said, I wanted to put that news out. And now I want to, let's see, make sure. Okay, now we're going to dive into the draft recap. Before we dive into this, boys, I just want to let you guys know how this was graded, right? So of course the RFL draft was a great event. And I have come up with the official grades for each team, and we're going to start from top to bottom, and then I'll explain kind of why I gave them that rating, why they're sitting there, and then what factors into why they got the grade that they did was multiple reasons. Is it players that you got that you're going to be able to utilize right away that could be staples? Did you get what you need, right? How did it affect your team? Is it something that's improved your team or made your team worse or kept you stagnant? These are all factors that went into the draft grades that I'm about to show you guys. And I will be posting these on social media as well. So I want to ask you guys, before I do this, there was only 2 teams that got an A+. Who do you guys think was rated the best, that had the best draft in this year's draft? Comment in chat below, man. Who do you guys think had the best draft in? All right, I'm seeing Shamrocks and Dreads, Steamers, Stillos, Miners, Snowhawks, Miners, Dreads, Shamrocks, definitely up there. Miners. All right, so drum roll, please. I need to add that as well. But let's go ahead and see. And so the team rated with the best draft in this past RFL draft was, oh, I clicked the wrong thing. Bail myself for that. Was the Portland Snowhawks. Now, the Portland Snowhawks, of course, there's 2 teams that got an A+ in this. The Portland Snowhawks get an A+. And just look at this draft here that these guys had. They're already one of the top talented teams in the RFL, an 88 overall team, right? These guys in the first round was able to pick up Elijah Walker, a 78 overall defensive end, the best defensive end out the class, and one of the top 3, actually the top overall rated corner out of the draft as well, with Xavier Spriggs at a 76, knocking out both of their needs. That was very little. And then they went on to draft an offensive lineman that was a 74 overall, a 72 overall linebacker in Paul Boss, a 72 overall guard in Michael McFadden, a 70 overall center, and Nathan Price got a corner. And at this point, it was just overkill. And the main reason why they got this #1 spot over the team that was next is because this team is already OD talented. And the fact that they got these pieces for cheap for the next 4 years until they have to extend the contract, Snowhawks are going to be a very dangerous team. A very dangerous team with these weapons that are going to develop and be monsters. They had the most picks in the RFL draft with 12. I mean, this was overkill. And of course, for anybody who doesn't know, you can see right there where it says GM CPU Smitty. That's me. I draft for all CPU teams, and that's the big perk of a CPU team. I know the overalls, so I'm pretty much in a war with coaches trying to see what do they know, who are they going to take, did they watch the draft, do they know, like, did they watch these prospects, like, who are they going to take? So a lot of my plans can get altered too depending on what the coaches do. And since we have a lot less coaches now, you know, and coaches had to hit. Coaches really had to hit, because if not, I was pulling. And the Snowhawks, man, they were just stacked with picks. They were stacked with picks. And to be able to pull that for this team was just like overkill. But at the same time, if I got to draft for them, then I got to do it. And they were just pulling and getting great players that are just going to make this team a danger for years to come. So shout out to the Portland Snowhawk guys out there, man. I know we got quite a few users on that team as well. Pecan, Khalil, Brian LeCavalier. We got some guys on that squad. And you guys definitely had the best draft, in my opinion, this year. All right. Team number 2. I'll ask you guys this question, then after this, we'll move on. I'm ask you the same question. So, who do you guys think had the second best draft in this past RFL draft? Definitely, Frankie. It's going to be lit. All right, going since Dreadnoughts or Shamrocks, Dreads, I'm seeing Dreads and Shamrocks, Cougars. All right, let's go ahead and check out who had the second best draft. The second best RFL draft grade belongs to, and the only other A plus, the Dreadnoughts, man. Shout out to Frankie. I want to give you a shout out, my guy, because my God, you went in and did your homework. I remember when you was explaining to me before the draft what you were doing and watching the tape and, you know, all that stuff that the time and stuff you put in to really look in at finding who the right guys were. And not to mention the fact that you had 6 draft picks in the first 2 rounds. You couldn't have hit any better than you had to with that. And it was needed because Dreadnoughts was a team in the past, you know, even with you there, in the past with you there, this was a team that was getting to the playoffs pretty good, and now it started to slow down, and the depth chart was very minimal. Like, you guys barely had enough for the minimum roster even on the team, to the point where y'all needed these picks. And this guy was able to hit on a lot of guys. I mean, look at this. Colo Ransom, middle linebacker. User wide receiver Michael Simmons. Miles Brock, defensive tackle. All 3 of those guys were selected in the first round, and he hit on a 73, 75, and another 75. Then in the second round, picks up a 74 overall center in Trey Miranda, another 73 overall middle linebacker in Pat Forney, and gets a kicker, which he desperately needed, filling another need for the team. All needs were pretty much hit at this point. He didn't get any corners, though. I know they needed some corners. The depth there is kind of low, but other than, I mean, he really just hit everything else. Even drafted a punter in the last round. So, I mean, Frankie really hit it out the park, man. And it definitely was the second best draft in this draft, man, getting that A plus. And then we move on to team number 3. Not gonna. I don't want to ask you guys who you think every time, because it could slow us up. But I do want to once again give a congratulations out to Frankie, man. Did a great job in this draft, man. All right, next, the San Jose Condors had the third best draft in this one. And it was mainly because of the players they hit that have the opportunity to play right away or very soon. Jay Hayden, a starting cornerback for the Condors. Tay Devine, a starting outside linebacker for the Condors. Chris Clark, a running back who will be starting next season after Cornell Mickens, a beast of a running back, leaves. And it's going to be a 1-2 punch with Chris Clark and him. And Chris Clark, if you've seen any of his Oregon film, this guy was, every time he touched the ball, you didn't know if he was going to crib it or not. Dude was that dynamic. And they got a user wide receiver in Rob Castillo with some aging veterans at the wide receiver position. And a kicker, which they needed, and Larry Payne. So they hit on almost every need that they needed for this team, and they hit good in the 70s with each one of those that they did do that for. So for me, the Condors had the third best draft in this past draft. 85 overall team too. These got the overalls. I'm gonna be making a graphic too, post on social media. It's gonna be pretty fire, showing you guys who the top 10 teams are overall wise. You can already figure that out by watching this all back, since I'll be showing all 32 teams. And you'll also be able to I'll also be showing the top 10 players at each position, making a graphic or something for that for you guys to be able to see. Fourth best draft goes to the Boston Shamrocks, man. Boston Shamrocks started out the gate, first overall pick, got a player in a position they didn't even have a player at all in. They needed an outside linebacker. I don't know why I put MLB, because Brock was an outside linebacker, not an MLB. But Brock Frederick, outside linebacker, he's starting right away. That's a day one starter. Got a defensive tackle, which they needed, and Javier Wheatley, because the other guys were aging, and their overall is not too much better than this. And they are in the last year of the contract. So big gain there. Got a 71 overall offensive tackle, needed offensive lineman, needed a running back. They only had one running back on the roster with Saeed Gore after letting Lester Gadsden go. And so they again, another team that hit on a lot of needs here and got some great caliber players. Isaiah Allen and Saeed Gore, I think, is going to be a really good 1-2 punch for the Boston Shamrocks. And they got a kicker. Again, hit on everything. Needed a kicker. And then the center and the tight end, just extras for depth. So Shamrocks really were able to improve off of this draft, and that's why they got the 4th best draft in my grades for the RFL draft. 5th best RFL draft goes to the Chicago Cougars, getting an A. They were able to pick up Austin Sanders. I know some guys were sitting up there thinking like, well, why'd you get Austin Sanders and not Elijah Walker, who was the highest overall defensive end? Because they had to play it smart. You had to get a guy who, I mean, Elijah Walker, great defensive end, but he has no user behind him to be able to improve his rate of development. And so, and he ended up falling to a great team in the Snowhawks with the 4th overall pick. So it worked out for both those players. But Austin Sanders, a day one starter now for Chicago, and he's a user who's going to be able to quickly boost up his development. So great pick there. Needed offensive linemen. A lot of their linemen are pretty solid, but they're old, and they get a 74 overall guard and Kenny Blackwell. This draft was full of great offensive linemen, and if you looked at the statistics of it, of how they fared this season, this was definitely the best offensive line draft class that we've ever had in the RFL. And so they ended up getting offensive linemen, needed help with that because sacks was a problem last year. And then this is a guy who can definitely develop in the future. Needed a defensive tackle because all the guys who were there are 30 years or older, and they get Wally Herman from Baylor, good 70 overall. This guy is very nimble at 6'7", 370 pounds. That's how big that guy is. But he's nimble and able to move. Guys, he got 75 speed, and he's able to move on his feet to put some pressure faster than the average defensive tackle, especially at that size. But again, being 6'7", and he's still, that's a lot of weight, but able to move. Brian Brown, they needed depth at safety. They only had 2 safeties in Chris Polk and Markel Wilcox. Those 2 guys were literally just were literally just alone. Any of them get injured, you got to use the corners, and that would have been a huge issue for the Cougars. So they handle a need there when it comes to depth. They get JT Cheeseborough, another back to add to this generic that can sit and wait, instead of a user. I kind of was trying to make sure that I put the best careers, gave each prospect and each player the best possible career that they could get with the team. And like I said, could have drafted a user running back, but why get a user running back or anything like that when you already got one there and he would have been battling for position. So instead you go get a generic who's going to be okay with, of course, not going to complain about not playing, not going to complain about not starting and all that stuff. And he's going to be able to get some touches from time to time in that backfield. And then in the late rounds, they end up getting a 72 overall offensive lineman in Robbie Clancy. And again, helping out that offensive line. That was huge for the Cougars, able to get some youthful 70-plus overall offensive linemen. And then the rest was just really just depth, and Thomas Pearson from Iowa and Morris Blaylock from Notre Dame. So great additions, great pickups for the Cougars. They're ranked 5 in the draft. 6 we have, with an A, the Louisville Lumberjacks. Louisville Lumberjacks had the 2nd overall pick, and with that 2nd overall pick, they were able to get Garrett Evans from Oregon, a 76 overall, was a beast. It was so shocking to him. That guy said, the story he told me, he said he was not expecting getting drafted that early, and he said he just froze up when it happened. He just was like, wow, did I really get drafted right now? And he says a feeling, of course, he's never going to forget. So I mean, that's what's special about the RFL draft, right, man? Just having those moments, hearing your name called, especially when you spent some time in the RFL. You spent 2 years in the RFL, had to take some time off, but came back, balled out for Oregon, was able to take them to the playoffs for the first time in college series history. And here he is, the second overall pick, going to the Lumberjacks. And now with a quarterback who is set to start day one in Jordan Granger, the Heisman of our league, as we call it, the Mackey Award winner, Jordan Granger, 73 overall. He's starting right away. That's two starters off rip. Got a defensive end in Derek Hatcher, as you can see there. Needed some help there. Had some aging guys, and was able to get a great quarterback. This is another draft that had, I said quarterback, a great tight end. This is another draft that had a lot of talent at the tight end position. And usually tight ends don't get picked up too much, and they get left out behind. And this has been a reoccurring thing, kind of in the RFL drafts. And they were able to get Heath Duval and one of those mid rounds, yeah, in the mid rounds, and a 75 overall tight end with his talent is great, man. To pair him up 1-2 punch along with their tight end. I'm blanking on the tight end's name right now, but he's a beast. Oh yeah, Hobbs, that's his name. Hobbs is an absolute monster, Zach Hobbs. And then you got Heath Duval on the other end, man. Jordan Granger is going to have weapons all day to throw to. I mean, you got two tight ends that's going to be able to get you the ball and run routes, get open. You got two wide receivers that are trees outside, standing well over 6'3". I think both of them are 6'5" and 6'6". So, and you could just throw the ball up, and they've been doing this for years. You just throw the ball up, even if they're covered, they're going to come down with the football. And Trey McClellan and John Johnson. And then you got a slot receiver who also made the Pro Bowl team with them. And I'm blinking. I'm thinking it's Taylor. No, it's Larry Cruz. Larry Cruz. So the weapons is crazy for Louisville. And the main thing they were missing even last year was a quarterback. And they had a quarterback in Trey Mason who's still there last year of his contract, but he did not perform. He's an 85 overall, but not going to give him that chance. Just going to let the young rookie Jordan Granger, progress. And if any injuries or anything happens to him, we still got old boy there, Joseph Fontanez backing up, still giving him more of him a chance to back up over Trey Mason. That is, unless there's some issues. Say for instance, Jordan Granger gets injured, and they're kind of on a playoff tour where they have a shot at something. Then you might want to throw Trey Mason in there just to give the team a chance of winning more games. And so that's the only reason why I would consider Trey Mason over Joseph Fontanez if that happens. But of course, I would still give Fontanez that opportunity to still play as that backup, just to see how it goes. And if he doesn't perform in that, then that's when, if they're still rolling, we're going to go ahead and throw in Trey Mason. So good rotation at the quarterback position. Got a defensive tackle too in the late round, Tyreek Allen, solid defensive tackle from West Virginia. And yeah, a great draft for the Louisville Lumberjacks, man. Very interested to see what's going to happen with this team this year. And for rank number 7, we have the London Black Knights coming in with the A grade. They got a starting offensive lineman in Vince Lucas, 75 overall. Got a starting cornerback who will be number 2 out there, Dalen Mitchell from Miami. Got a starting outside linebacker from Quincy Jenkins. Again, a lot of this had to do with getting players who are going to make immediate impacts and be able to play right away. If you could get those kind of guys, then it really impacted what I thought of your draft grade, to be able to have players that can contribute immediately, especially in need. And the Black Knights needed that. Offensive line, they still have not been able to hit that, but they've been hitting everything else around that offensive line. And it's going to be interesting to see, what comes of this team with, the picks with these players, how they're going to be able to develop and stuff like that. But they were able to hit and get some quality players on their teams, and I think it's going to do a really good job. At number 8, because I've been spending a little bit more time than I want to. But number 8 for top drafts, the Oklahoma City Bisons, man. Oklahoma City Bisons get a B+. Needed an offensive lineman. Got a starting lineman in Will Lowe. Got a starting slot wide receiver in Kentaro Sheffield, who spent 3 seasons in college with Ohio State, won more national championships than anyone in college series history, with winning a national championship all 3 years. And he's going to be out there with Sam Gusto and those guys. So, and I think Luke Chamberlain. Yeah. So he is a great addition for this team. Sean Acosta, a solid tight end, needed one because their tight ends were kind of young and aging. They got rid of Peterson. Joey Greenwood, a good addition right there. Needed a punter, ended up getting that. A good outside linebacker in Delvin Bowles from TCU. So it was a great draft for real for the Bisons. So they get the B plus and the 8th overall ranking for best draft. All right, for the 9th, we have the Tampa Bay Tigers. I gave them a B plus, and they did pretty good with the picks they got, man. I mean, George Chamberlain, a good outside linebacker, able to get Cam Johnson, a very good safety from Oklahoma, 75 overall, you can see there. Got a kicker, which they needed. And ended up getting in the later round a 70 overall wide receiver in Kari Crosby. So he had pretty good, even picked up a fullback, 71 overall. So the Tigers, they did a good job, man. They did a good job. And so I think they were definitely a top 10 draft with what they were able to acquire for that team. Definitely interested to see how the Tigers just continue to get better and better. I mean, last year, this is a team that should have been in the playoffs technically, which I know it sucked for Stein, but it really came down to a head-to-head in which they lost to the Monarchs, and the Monarchs ended up getting in instead of them. So that sucked. But this team continues to be on the up and up in the build to get to the playoffs one day. They still have not done that in franchise history. And I think it's coming soon, man. This is a solid team. They've got a great coach who's been putting in a lot of work, building little by little, and just grinding hard, man. He had a pretty solid draft here. Top 10 draft. Shout out to you, Coach Stein. All right. Number 10 is the Columbus Explorers. It's crazy that this team continues to have these drafts as they had to, but able to get some good picks and some great players where they needed. They needed linebackers, and they got some good ones, but they're old, right? 28 years old, I think, are the outside linebackers that's starting currently right now, and of course they got a 31 to 32-year-old middle linebacker in DeMarco Lando, and so linebacker was an issue, and they were able to get 370 or better overall linebackers. Their first pick was a linebacker and Shaquille Bolden from Alabama, 74 overall. I think he's going to be a great fit and replacement in the future to kind of mold into that same type of linebacker in which DeMarco Lando was. I think he's going to be a beast. He's fast. He's a big playmaker. They were able to get him, able to get an offensive lineman. The offensive lineman needs, they needed one of those at the guard position. They end up getting Sean Nix. Good defensive tackle, Byron Cone. And then the two outside linebackers here. Again, we're struggling with age. Good linebackers right now, that's 28, but these are the guys who's going to be rolling in and developing. And by the time those star linebackers, it's time to hang it up or their contract's over, you got James Gordon and Tavon Carruthers that are going to be coming in and replacing them at a good rate. And I think that even with that development, even if it's not that fast, with them being generic players, it's actually a good thing. And I think people are starting to open their eyes up a little bit more to understanding why there is benefits to drafting generic players or not, or getting a player that you're going to sit that's a user for a few years, because that's exactly why you can run into the same situation in which we saw with Gino Gannon and Marquise Washington. With these guys, I think they could be like a good 75, 76 overall by the time the starting outside linebackers, have to bow out from their contracts and not getting re-signed. And that's a solid foundation for guys coming in 21 years old. Let's say 2 seasons, they're going to be 23, 75, 76 overall playing. By that time, they're going to be well into their 80s, middle 80 overall guys. And so great pickups for the future for the Explorers. These guys got youth. Quarterback, shout out to, I forgot to put Pat next to my name here for the GM CPU, because I did wanted to add the guys in there. I think I forgot to do that for a couple other teams. But Pat was able to pull the trigger on the last 2 guys. I said, hey man, since these guys pretty much can choose anything, just go ahead and choose the last 2 guys. So Pat McNeil drafted Dom Beck from Auburn. He was a 63, and 66 overall. TJ Anderson he wasn't from the college series. He was just a generic guy. Ended up getting a good 66 overall strong safety, late in the round just for some depth. So, shout out to the guys who were into it with me and picking and helping with some decisions, later on, like Mac and all those assistant GMs. So, yeah, shout out to y'all. But Explorers, 10th best draft. 11th best draft goes to the Dublin Celtic Tigers. They get a B plus, and they get a B plus because they really were able to hit it out the park with their first two picks. I think these two players are going to be big time in the future for the Dublin Celtic Tigers. Lewis Quintana and Euro Winbush. We already know the controversy and stuff that was going on with Euro Winbush, and of course we'll get to that when we get to the minors. No, the minors don't want to hear anything about it, but at the end of the day, this will be the last day in which I'll speak on it and stuff like that. But Euro Winbush, hands down the best running back out of this draft class. Just even going into their his storyline, this guy could have been a top back coming out last year. He chose to stay because he wanted to be the top running back coming out of the class, and that he was as a 78. And then Lewis Quintana, 1-year player, dominated at Miami, got sacks, great at getting pressures. Dublin Celtic Tigers needed a guy like that, and they get it with Lewis Quintana. They lost their edge rusher and Jason Lindsley. Speaking of the minors, to the minors, they lost quite a bit of guys, man, due to age and things like that. So getting Lewis Quintana, getting Euro Winbush, these guys, Lewis Quintana's going to be a day one starter, and Euro Winbush will be touching the rock for sure, because it's an unfortunate, sad day if you are an old OG Dublin Celtic Tigers fan, because Trey Worsley will not be getting a contract extension. He's in the last year of his contract, and Euro Winbush, young guy, got to get him in there playing. He's going to be touching the rock, and I think it's going to be great. Great duo with those two. Then get the outside linebacker in Andy Larson. He was from Penn State. They needed an outside linebacker because they were kind of struggling in that department. They had some outside linebackers, but they weren't the best. So getting a young guy right there, he could be touching the 70 if he balls and gets his opportunities. So not bad. Defensive tackle needed that because they only had one in Wayne Babber. So Marcus Arthur, another Penn State alumni, going to the fold, needed a punter. So they hit on a lot of things that they needed. And these guys were late picking at 29th in the RFL draft each round. So definitely a good draft for the Celtic Tigers, getting the players that they needed. And those big two impact players, I think, are going to be major moving forward. For the 12th best draft goes to Pittsburgh Pioneers. Pittsburgh Pioneers get a B grade. And man, hit it out the park with the first pick. Needed offensive lineman help. We already know it's the Javier Santana show. It's showtime. And because we decided to stick with him and not get anybody else in the building, you need somebody to block for him. So we go ahead and get an offensive guard. This was the highest overall rated player in the draft, and that was Matt Wilcox, the only offensive lineman that did not allow any sacks all season long. And if you were watching Michigan games, what really made this guy this dynamic is Michigan's offensive line was a force up front. They were great at blocking all around, especially in the run game. Talk about JT Cheeseborough, who went to the Chicago Cougars. Like the way they were able to push and led by him going all season at a guard position and still didn't give up no sack. I mean, Michigan had some very solid offensive linemen, of course, coming out of this draft, and Matt Wilcox was hands down the best. They got the best offensive lineman, and then they go ahead and get a defensive tackle in Angelo Michaels, who's one of the top defensive tackles. Needed some help at that position. Got some more offensive lineman help with the offensive guard from Maryland, Dwayne Hilton. And it got some depth and other help elsewhere. You see Tyler Landry here. Even ended up getting Devin Diggs, man. Devin Diggs, Washington quarterback sitting there on the same team. And of course, it's going to be competition for playing time and stuff like that. But of course, Santana, he's in the driver's seat. But you never know, Devin Diggs. Your number could be called at any moment. And just always stay ready. That's what it is, man. And we're now starting to get into that era where there's more competition, right? Because Joseph Fontanez now has lost his spot to Jordan Granger. That's still a battle, just a one overall difference. You got now these two going on, and there's a lot more battles to come in the future with especially this class that we got coming in here. So and shout out to the guys, and best of luck to the guys in that battle. Right. And then to hit on a 74 overall strong safety late in the draft with Carl Stamper. And I even gave coaches some extra time too, because I could have been picked one of these guys because, of course, again, I know the overalls, but I wanted to give the coaches a chance. I was like, I don't think guys are really looking at those non-college series players. So I literally gave them rounds 4 and 5 on day 3 without picking any of those guys just to see who would do it. Dunn ended up getting one of them, so he was the first one to pull. And then after that, you started seeing guys taking a chance on some of those guys from looking at what they did in their combine and stuff like that. Excuse me. Carl Stamper ends up going here at the safety position. They need some help there. I mean, they got a guy who's already starting, but he's old. His contract's about to be up, and Carl Stamper is going to be a strong safety coming in that position. So great players, man. Even got an extra receiver in Jeremy Harris from Notre Dame. So yeah, man, Pittsburgh, 12th best draft in this past draft. For the 13th best draft in the 2024 RFL draft, it's the Los Angeles Crusaders getting a B+. Was able to get Steve King Jr., a beast of a one-year linebacker, performing linebacker, and Steve King from Miami. 76 overall. He's going to be a day one starter. End up getting a defensive end. Needed that because, again, age, big problem there. They got Stephen Ferguson from Georgia. Very solid defensive end for the team. Defensive tackle. Got youth again there, too, with Shaq Kendricks. Tight end, another UCLA beast tight end, and Otis Jackson. Now he gets paired up with Lewis Happ from last year. Lewis Happ was the best tight end in the RFL college series in CS4. So, man, it's just they were able to hit good, able to good players, of course, were able to fall to the to the Crusaders for me to take, and got a punter, Nick Ellis, another star. So they were hitting, man. Got D'Angelo Gary to change up the pace because I mean we already know what Marlon Marshall brings to the table. He's a nice, well-balanced running back, but again, you don't want to run one running back all season long and wear him down because injuries are, like I said, it's going to be a huge factor this year in the RFL. So you kind of want to make sure you got a stable backs. And they got a good backup running back in Darius Young II, but he's kind of on the older end. And now you bring in that Georgia power back in D'Angelo Gary, the 3-year running back, man, who was just bringing it, man. His first 2 years as backup. He was splitting carries all his college career, to be honest. He was more so of that main back, though, this past season, splitting it up with 5-5, as we like to call him, McLaughlin. But D'Angelo Gary switching up, bringing that power. And then you got Marshall, who also has that power, but that ability to make you miss, get by you. Like, I think they're going to have a really good backfield with him as an additions. And they really hit just everywhere, man. They only had one player that wasn't a 70. He was just an overall off, which was Gary. And they got a 73 overall fullback. So, like, this offense is already explosive. Now it's going to be a lot more explosive, more so in the run game. And, like, you get a 73 overall fullback coming in, rookie, he's young, I formation. You bring in D'Angelo Gary behind that? That's crazy. That's scary. So, a great draft for the Los Angeles Crusaders as they rank 13th. 14th ranked best draft goes to the Baltimore Gunners. And the Baltimore Gunners, man, did great, man. They didn't have those early picks, but when they were able to select, they were able to hit where they needed it, and great players were able to fall to them in those areas. Needed outside linebacker bad. Ended up getting Shaden Wilson, which was the best available at the time. Was a beast for Georgia, 1-year player there, and then Tevin Corbett in the building. He's going to Baltimore. You pair him up with DeAndre Ken. You got Jabri Jackson, of course, slinging the rock. And now you got him starting in the slot. Man, Jabri got weapons, man. He's got weapons now. And then you get his successor now, which is going to be Tyon Nickerson. Tyon Nickerson is going to be a successor to Jabri Jackson, we know he's on a 2-year contract. He's going to play that out. And then after he's done, it's Tyon time. And honestly, Timu Tyon time. But yeah, it's Tyon time. And with 2 years of development with this kid as active as he is, I could see him definitely being one of the next greats. And again, he doesn't have to develop at a fast rate either, because you don't want to fall again in that same category as Marquise Washington and Gino Gannon. If he develops at a decent rate and he's not starting right away to get that extra XP, by the time he plays his 2 years of his contract, so he'll be the starter on his 3rd year. He has a good season there, gets some good XP. He's probably touching like an 80, 85, 86 or something like that. He's going to ask for some decent money. But at that point, when he's asking for that money, he's going to be affordable. And the Baltimore Gunners got money. So Tyon now becomes a player, a quarterback long term for the Baltimore Gunners after Jabri Jackson. Similar style players, dual threat quarterbacks. Will he be anything like Jabri Jackson? I ain't going to say he's going to do all that. But at the end of the day, I think he's a great quarterback to take over for the reins there for what Jabri was able to bring to this organization. Then they got a cornerback, needed cornerback depth, and Kendrick Ellington. Got an offensive lineman in the later rounds because they need some help with that. Offensive linemen were going early in the rounds. They didn't have those early picks to be able to capitalize on that. So instead of going for something they really couldn't hit on big, they hit big in other areas of need, such as that outside linebacker, that wide receiver position, that quarterback, the future position, all that. So they get the 14th ranking with a B rating. At 15, we have the Dallas Desperados coming in at a B minus. They hit big with the offensive lineman and Don Woods. Don Woods, 78 overall. He was the next best offensive lineman out of the draft. And we know how bad the Desperados offensive line is, man. Tavion Hall has just been that good for the Desperados that he's been able to make them look like they're somewhat decent. But now they actually get a decent guard here who's going to be able to pull and open up lanes for Tavion Hall. Day one starter. Got a day one starter at the tight end position too, and Jaden Bush was a beast tight end at Georgia with just being in there for one season. He comes out at 75 overall. They have a better tight end overall in Ryan Moxon, but Ryan Moxon is 30 or 31 years old. He's one of those, and Jaden Bush is coming in at 21. So he's starting right away. He's very athletic at the tight end position. We know what his build was from. It was built over that guy, Brock. I forgot his name. You know, the starting tight end for Georgia is in real life, man. That guy, he's a beast. But that's his build. And so he ends up being a extra threat for Marquise Washington, man. He may be a 75 overall, but overall is not going to always mean everything. It all depends on certain attributes in certain situations. So Jaden Bush, a day one starter as well. Brock Bowers, that's his name. Yep. Then they ended up getting another offensive lineman in the 70s with Mateo Rivera, and then ended up getting outside linebacker Keenan Richards. They needed that as well. So they were hitting on big time needs. They got aging wide receivers, end up getting a user wide receiver who can develop in Jeffrey Rozier II from North Carolina. So again, another team just hitting on big time needs now and for the future. And another offensive lineman they were able to get in DeMarcus Woodard just for depth and stuff like that. And Notre Dame wide receiver DeAndre Butler. So we're about halfway now. Well, we're at the halfway mark for team number 16 with the best draft in the RFL goes to the Memphis Steamers, getting a B rating. These guys, of course, had to wait till late in rounds to be able to pick up their players, and they picked up some pretty good players, man. Rodney Goins ended up going in the first round from Baylor. No, he was hyped and excited. Amir was excited to be able to get somebody in the locker room. Rodney Goins going to be a day one starter. They got a safety right now that is a higher overall than him at that position, but the thing is he's older, and I think he's like 27, and his overall isn't that much better than Rodney's, and Rodney's coming in at 21 years old, a 71 overall, and he's a 74 at like 27. So there's no need to play him over Rodney. Rodney will be starting day one. Of course, you know, getting a guy coming in, you know, as a rookie playing day one, he's going to have some tough moments out there. But it's all part of the plan of development. And Rodney Goins, I think, is going to be a a great safety, makes some big plays there for the Memphis Steamers. Got an offensive lineman, getting a guard, and Chad Kutcher. Needed some offensive linemen, especially at that guard position, because they were kind of aging there and didn't have too much depth at that position. And a big pickup was T.J. Holcomb, man. T.J. Holcomb was a beast for Auburn. He just came out of nowhere, 1 year generic wide receiver, 73 overall, and he's extremely fast, perfectly fits the mold of the Memphis Steamers with those guys, and Jake Pride, Romeo Jackson, and J.J. Vaughn, all speed demons. All three have a superstar or X Factor dev. Like, that's how elite this receiving core is for the Steamers. And then they end up getting a 95 speed wide receiver who was one of the top deep threats in the RFL College Series this past year, and TJ Holcomb. So it was a great addition for the Steamers there for the future. And then you got Frank Shelby, a defensive end. Needs some help with depth right there. Marquise Jenkins was a 3-year wide receiver for West Virginia. His first 2 seasons was a backup, but he came in in the most clutch moments, making the big plays and scoring the touchdowns for the Mountaineers when the season was going on. So 2 great wide receivers added to this team, man, for the future. He's a 69 overall. Then going outside of the box, getting someone who wasn't a part of the college series, and Deshaun Tarpley. He's a 66 overall outside linebacker, just getting some depth there. And at the running back position, they ended up getting that boy 5'5", man. A 5'5" running back out of UGA, Jamarcus McLaughlin. When he touched the ball, he was electric at UGA. We know he's got some really good speed. I believe his rating is 92 speed and 92 acceleration. So 5'5" can move, man. 5'5" can move. He can hit his little Darren Sproles at times. And that's what this Memphis Steamers team is all about. It's all about speed when it comes to Memphis, man. Full steam ahead. They live by that. So great draft picks for the Steamers here, coming in at 16. All right, then we get to 17, and it's the Salt Lake City Elks getting a B-. These guys hit big with Dylan Lewis at the middle linebacker position. I don't think it could have been any better linebacker that could have fell to them with that pick to replace what a Hall of Fame linebacker that they have right now currently on the team is, and that was Antoine Buck, man. Antoine Buck is just such a beast. But his time has come. This guy's like 33 years old, 34 years old, and he still was in the RFL top 100. That's how impactful of a player he was. And to get Dylan Lewis, a user linebacker, to come into that role, I think he fits that perfectly. They end up getting an offensive lineman as well, 73 overall guard, and Sammy Fitzsimmons from Arizona State. Got a corner, needed some depth there. Got Paul Carroll, got another offensive lineman. They end up getting 4 offensive linemen out this draft. You see Jason Reynolds at 68. They needed help and depth at that, depth and youth at that offensive line position, and they ended up getting that, and then got a solid tight end in Monty Wilbon, who was a 3-year tight end for South Carolina. So good additions there. Not really too much to talk about as they come in at 17. At 18, the New England Monarchs with a B-. These guys didn't have too many draft picks, only 5 picks, but they hit big on a few of them. And Darius Donald was definitely one of them. Needed help at the defensive tackle position, getting older there. Donald was the best defensive tackle coming out this draft. They ended up getting him. Bryce Zakowitz ended up falling to him as a generic wide receiver, which, he's got time to develop. That is a good receiver to be able to have in the back pocket with a receiving core that's kind of aging right now. They ain't kind of aging. They are aging. It's got 2 outside receivers who are starting right now that are 30 or older. So to have Bryce Zakowitz as generic coming in, I can see him possibly even by next year being able to touch the field. So a great addition right there. Ended up getting some more depth at the receiver position because they needed that, because they know that these wide receivers that they got right now are aging out. Got Devin Peppers, a speed demon. I think he had 95 speed coming in. So he's very fast out of Wisconsin. Then he got a tight end, Sean Wiener, and outside linebacker Max Collins. So those other 2 picks is more so depth and just development guys. But the first 2 picks were significant, and I could see Peppers being a nice subbing guy down the line. Coming in at pick number 9. Well, that's it. Pick coming in at number 19 for draft performance is the San Diego Red Dragons. They get a C+ 19. I like their first 2 picks. I really do. Um, were they the best they could have got? I don't think so. But I also see the logic behind it. Of course, Seth Brewer was a great steal, in my opinion, for them. Overall, of course, he wasn't the best defensive end in this class. He was kind of up there, but he started out slow, finished strong, won a national championship, and ended up getting him in the first round along with Zion Waddles. And Zion Waddles, both these guys, users who's got Relo Bucks, who you just know they're going to develop well with this team, with a team that they need players to develop well because they are aging out very bad. This is, I believe, the oldest team now in the RFL and has been for a little bit. And I'm talking about even with that included with Celtic Tigers. Those two are neck and neck, and yeah, to be able to get Seth Brewer, I think he's going to be a great addition with his development. Zion Waddles, we know how active he is. He's going to turn out to be a great guy. Even getting E.J. Bailey, he's a user wide receiver. He said why he went out and got E.J. Bailey, the 6'6" tall, 230-pound wide receiver out of Washington. He got him because he said he wanted to build that same identity of the Twin Towers again. For anybody who doesn't know the Twin Towers, for the OGs of the RFL who watch the Red Dragons, you guys know who the Twin Towers is. And that was McIntosh, who's still currently there. And then they had Davis at the time, who was a beast. He's on the roster, but he's dropped significantly in overall. But those two were 6'6", and just the Twin Towers on the outside that made big plays. And he ends up getting E.J. Bailey. I think it's going to be a nice little solid project to work on. As long as he develops himself, he could be a guy touching the field as well. Got a corner and James Kramer, just pretty much getting guys because they needed a lot of players and a lot of depth. And so they end up getting James Kramer, cornerback, offensive tackle, and Juan Corona, as you can see there. Another wide receiver because they only had 3 wide receivers, I believe, on the roster coming into the draft. So they needed some wide receivers. They ended up getting that. Will Stamper was a very solid wide receiver at South Carolina, coming in at 69. Got a middle linebacker and Matt Carr, and then another corner with Reggie Bullard just for that depth. So I think he did a pretty solid job with what he had to work with. Again, some guys can say, well, why couldn't it have been a higher grade or whatever? Well, I don't. The main thing is a lot of factors that go into my grade, and the reason why I give him this grade is because at the end of the day, even though I feel like he got the best player, some good players for what he had to work with, it's still like, okay, but this is these players, like they aren't the top guys. This is what they can add to your team, and so like because they weren't that type of splash. I don't see those guys as like splash players immediately. I see them in the future. That kind of ties into why I put certain grades the way they are, and I give the Red Dragons a C+. All right, moving in for the 20th best draft is the New York Barons coming in as C+. And they didn't have too many draft picks, only had 6. And I think they did a great job with what they had to work with. And the reason why it's crazy because I've seen Roland sit there talk about getting Tyon. There was no need for the Barons to get a quarterback, to be honest, in that first round. It wasn't. They had a glaring issue at the defensive end position. And when you look at that defensive end position, you got Sean Bailey, in which he traded for, but he's 27, 28 years old, coming in at a 70. He's a 78 overall. And I feel like the defense, you get a guy who can start right away because there was nobody else even on the other side outside of him. Get one of the top defensive ends. Ryan Ward out of Georgia was one of the top defensive ends. You get him, and then you worry about the quarterback. And getting Dorian Chavis was great. Same overall as Tyon, and he's actually more athletic than Tyon. He is a quarterback that is able to run around and extend plays. Had a great second year after the transfer from Penn State to Miami. And so to that move right there, think about it. You get Tyon, what kind of defensive end or player would you have gotten with that second overall pick? Definitely wouldn't have gotten a 74 overall defensive end. And so you get what you can get the best of what you need first, then you worry about those other positions because at the end of the day, Barons do have a quarterback. Is he the best quarterback? Is he the franchise guy? No, he's not looked at as a guy who's going to be there long term. He's 28 years old. We already know the story about Ryan Brinker. And so you get him there to be able to play. He's going to be the starting guy, but that again, he's in the same boat as Tyon with the Gunners. Dorian Chavis gets the opportunity to sit a few years, develop his player, become affordable for the team, and be able to play when given that opportunity at a good level with his unique skill set. So Dorian Chavis going to the Barons, I think that was a great addition there. And I'm getting offensive lineman, needed that at guard with James Mazieka from TCU. Got Danny Leverett, I believe he was from Notre Dame, 67 overall. Sidney Jenkins was solid Louisville wide receiver. So just need some depth at wide receiver. Just added a guy there, and then got Deion Burns. So I mean, wasn't the most flashy mid to late draft for the Barons, but those first two picks, I think, great picks there for the Barons, and especially their future. Ryan Ward is going to be able to start right away, and Dorian Chavis is going to be the future, I believe, for the Barons at that quarterback position. Moving on at 21 for the 21st best draft, it is the DC Marshals with a C plus. They were hitting pretty good those first three picks, man. Shout out to Lito Loso though, man. I forgot to add your name to the GM thing here too with me. Apologies for that. But yeah, he's assistant GM. He is also a player on the Marshals, and he was able to help around with the Marshals a little bit, especially with making trades and stuff outside of dealing with the draft. He made a really good trade. At first, I was skeptical about, but as he broke it down, I was like, "Hey, man, that actually makes sense." And he ended up getting T.J. Metcalf from the Miners. And the Miners had a podcast just last night, and it was a solid, it was a good podcast, man. And they just pretty much were breaking down their reasoning behind certain things and stuff like that. And they look forward to seeing Metcalf thrive somewhere else. They weren't really able to utilize him. He didn't really turn out to be the type of player that they expected him to be. So they traded to get some draft capital and stuff for him. And it works out great for the Marshals because he's got a place. He's got a place to build. They handle their defensive end position right there. Don't got to worry about drafting that for the draft. And now with their first pick that they're able to choose and select from, they're able to pick up an offensive lineman and getting Kendall Hall. And I believe Kendall Hall is from Ohio State. I might be wrong about that, but 72 overall offensive tackle. They needed that. Cornerback, they needed depth at the quarterback position. Even though they got some good corners, they needed that depth. And Wisconsin cornerback Walt Peak coming in at a 70 was great. Got a user wide receiver in Hakeem Prince, so he's got some potential there to be able to touch the field in the near future. Ended up getting a tight end, needed some depth there because they didn't really have too much. Michael Galloway II, another user tight end. And again, when I bring up these guys, for guys who are behind these players, and you're hearing this, man, I'm telling you, if you are active, if you are getting the reloads, if you're developing your player, you could touch the field sooner than you think. You're going to have to wait, though, at times. You're going to be in some situations where you have to wait. But if you don't take advantage of being able to up your guy now, somebody else in the future will, and it will be too late for you. So that's why I mention guys like that. Hakeem Prince, I don't see him being like no starter or anything like that right away. They got some solid wide receivers, but he definitely has a potential if he works on his player to be a starter probably towards the end of the year. Or touching the field by the end of the year, and then playing next year. So it's a lot of guys with potential. Then you got I got a fullback here. I don't think the DC Marshals drafted this fullback. I might be wrong about that, but that fullback, I think I forgot to get that off because I'm pretty sure that 73 overall fullback went to forgot what team it was, to the Crusaders. So I might have messed up on that one. But yeah, Zach Stafford got a middle linebacker, aging a little bit there, got an offensive guard. So C plus, man, it was a solid draft for the Marshals for what they could do. Coming in at 22, it is the Sacramento Miners. And this is the part where I really want to dive into, man. It's like a lot happened in the draft when it came to these guys. I gave them a C plus at 22. And, I talked about this, and the main issue that I had, with the whole situation, not just, just for the last thing to talk about it all, is, and I definitely got their point. I'm glad they had their podcast to really break down and elaborate on to the reason, their logic as to why they picked certain players that they did. And kind of the same deal that happened was why they picked Steve Washington, and they felt offended about the reaction to that. That's why I kind of felt offended about the reaction of the lash out against Euro Wimbush too, because it's like I definitely agree with that. If it's a guy's draft day, you don't want to ruin it, man. Steve Washington got drafted. There's no need for anybody to talk about, oh, this guy is that. But I mean, at the end of the day, though, this is a draft and people are going to do that, right? Some people are going to lash out and give their opinion. At the end of the day, don't focus, don't worry about that. You make the picks. And if anybody's been following the Sacramento Miners and watching the picks and stuff that they make and the players that they get, it can come out as a question to you to be like, why did they get this player? Why did they do that? And which they explain on their podcast. But they end up making the most out of what they get, man. This past season was a great example of that. Getting Miles McCain, getting Killian Bain earlier. Like, there's a lot of guys, guys had some questions about them getting at the time they did, but Dunn found a way to make it happen. My big issue with it all, though, was, I just feel like Dunn really didn't know about Euro Wimbush. I understand why you didn't want him, though. I can understand why you didn't want him standing at the size. Being 5'9", 181 pounds, that is small for a running back, but the guy was balling. So it's like he still was the top back, and I was more so taken back by the point of after that, he was like, oh, we got to change how this is done. He was running back of the year. It didn't matter. I mean, if anybody watched Euro Wimbush, it would tell you this guy, not just for 2 seasons when he went to Ohio State, for 3 seasons, even when he was at Penn State, this guy was balling. He was never trash. So that was my pushback on that. But when you look at their draft, I gave him a C plus because I feel like it didn't make. I know Dunn's going to make the most out of the players he's got, and he's got some good ones, right? John Grant and Steve Washington are solid players. He's going to make the most of them. He's going to find a way to utilize them. They're going to have good careers there. It's just, I feel like it's a move as to why I had to give them a C plus, because I felt like this kept the Miners more so stagnant and actually dropped them down from their potential this season. What I mean by that is you got Pavo Frederick, a solid wide receiver who's been making some plays, right? Of course, he hasn't been active, so I can get that. And Dunn loves his active guys. But John Grant, he'll be able to develop and get there, but now you have to pretty much force John Grant in when he's not all the way ready. He's got good attributes, though. We know he's got some speed. We know he can make some plays. He was a touchdown machine when he was in college. But, of course, things are different when you get to the RFL level. And I feel like it's a sacrifice now that the Sacramento Miners have to make to get him in to develop. And it's the same deal kind of with Steve Washington, but not as bad with Steve Washington. Getting Euro Wimbush here would have been better overall player-wise. When you think about it, when you're looking at overalls, but you got to understand also where Dunn is coming from when it comes to why he selected the back that he got. Because Steve Washington, even though I'm pretty sure he thought he was going to be the highest overall running back after 1 year, that was not going to be the case. But Steve Washington is a much bigger back than him. He is an explosive back. And he doesn't need to get a guy who is the top of the class running back to be his day one guy when he's already got Locker there. So Locker's going to handle the load for sure when it comes to the power running and in between the tackles. And I think that mixing that with Steve Washington and what he's able to bring to the table with the juke and stuff, that's just as good, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. Steve Washington may not be the overall that Euro Wimbush is, but Steve Washington, for a fact, will contribute to the run game of the Sacramento Miners and have a great career. So to me, of course, you scratch your head thinking when you're looking at the overalls and things, but you gotta understand and respect the logic. And so that's why, even though on the draft day, I didn't really say anything at all about the pick. I didn't agree necessarily, with the stuff that happened during, but I understand it. I see it, they're going to be good. Then he ends up, like I said, being one of the only guys before I started pulling the trigger on non-college series guys, getting Paul Kilroy, which was a 74 overall strong safety. So, like, getting Paul Kilroy with the safeties he's already got there is kind of like overkill. He got 2 top 100 safeties on his roster on defense. We know the Miners' defense is top notch, man. It's definitely up there. If it ain't top five, no, I mean if it ain't top three, it's top five for sure. I think it's a top three defense, honestly, with the way that they're able to, with the way that their playmakers are, the way they were able to shut things down last year. Then you get a safety like this to be able to kind of to come in. That's overkill, man. I think they got arguably the best safety duo. I gotta say the best safety duo. I say in the league if they're both in the top 100 and performing the way they have been for the past couple of years. And then that's really those three picks were great for him. Got a defensive tackle. Ended up trading one away. So you need to get something, and they got Grant Spiller, not a bad defensive tackle. Of course, a project at 68 overall. And then the last two was just getting some defensive ends. So not a bad draft for the Miners, man. I just felt like, and I had to hit them with the grade of a C plus, and put them where they are because it's just for me personally, I just felt like the team this year has to take a step back to put these guys in the forefront. That's where I stand when it comes to the Miners in their draft. All right, moving on to number 23. Got the Austin Armadillos getting a C plus. And Fredo Vasquez was an awesome pickup for the Armadillos. Was the best user O lineman because he was the only user O lineman in the RFL draft. There was two other guys, but they didn't make it. They didn't check in. So shout out to Fredo, man, for being a first round draft pick, going to the Austin Armadillos. I mean, you already knew the writing was on the wall when you come in as a user offensive lineman. Most likely you're getting picked up in that first round if you do good. And he did great at USC. And he's a day one starter for the Armadillos. That was a phenomenal pickup for the Armadillos. And then they got a tackle with a 70 overall, Morse Bates, solid. And the rest was pretty good for depth and good key areas, but it wasn't like those impact players. Got a cornerback because they needed it. Leon Burton there at a 67. Defensive end, they ended up getting B.J. Donaldson. Needed that. Needed a running back, and he's going to be the backup running back. Just imagine this duo, man. If anybody watched any Mike Spears play from Auburn, Mike Spears is going to be the backup, like that power back, along with Levi Dixon. That's going to be amazing to watch this year. I'm not going to lie. I think that's going to be fire. My computer just did some weird update stuff. So if it's moving slow or anything choppy right now, my apologies. Hopefully it don't mess up the stream. But yeah, man. Mike Spears, I think, is a great combination to go along with the running back Levi Dixon, man. That's going to be interesting to watch. And then free safety Brian Langford. They're able to get that. Some solid guys that's going to be able to touch the field and stuff, but no splash players and stuff like that, which is why I give them a C plus. All right, C plus. And number 24 goes to the Orlando Sentinels. Got a corner in J.J. Harris. Is a good pickup. Got a good offensive guard, too, in Jonathan Craig. Ended up getting a defensive tackle, Jawan Vincent. Got tight end, Lane Carnegie. Wide receiver, they got some good picks, but again, just no names really like just splashing off as to like being big impact players. J.J. Harris is the one guy, and the rest of them is solid players for the future, I think. Very solid players for the future. Michael Smith Jr. being a user player, I know he's going to be able to work his way up, over time. So, and they needed some receivers too. So, and I say that in terms of they needed some receivers for depth. I know they got some pretty solid ones, but again, Tavon Bryson's an older guy. He's like in his 30s now. They do have the Dutch out there and Rob Schultz, which is a good good middle-aged wide receiver they're going to have for a little while. They got DeAndre Campbell, as we like to call him, Flame Campbell. Flame out there playing the slot. He's starting, and so like he could work his way into like a fourth role, and then in the future, down the line could be playing in that slot. So some good picks here for the Orlando Sentinels, man. Shout out to Q too, because he was sending in these picks as he was going. And I put Armstrong in there, but I feel like Q was doing some helping with some decisions and stuff on certain players as well, and they did a pretty solid job. So shout out to the Sentinels. All right, with a C plus, you got the Cincinnati Hogs, able to get a starting offensive, center at a 76 overall, and Casey McCoy. Then ended up getting a quarterback for the future, and Ronnie Shanahan. We already know, and we've been kind of iffy. We've been very iffy on starting quarterback McBride for the longest, even with his tenure with the San Antonio Dreadnoughts, getting traded over here. He did good that one year, but his second year it was kind of mid. He was not looking too great. Ronnie Shanahan, he's definitely in a good position if he develops and works well to be that next guy. He possibly could even, if McBride's playing absolutely terrible this year and they're looking bad, this guy could touch the field by this year. So Shanahan being a good pickup, getting a free safety, which they needed because the guys, they have a free safety, two free safeties. One of them supposed to be a strong safety, which is Strickland. And he's a starting guy, but he's also an older guy. And so getting a 21-year-old safety and Sharif Hunter is also a good pickup. Then the rest of the guys, just projects for the Hogs and Cole Morton, Greg Farr, and Corey Holcomb. So not bad. No splash players really like that other than the offensive lineman, and we already know pretty solid future it looks like for Ronnie Shanahan. And we get to pick number 26. This goes out to the London Bulldogs. These guys, of course, won the Reload Bowl this past season, and so they're picking dead last. And so with their dead last picks, they just really went with the best player they felt was available, it seemed, getting Eddie Champ, user tight end out of Oklahoma, 72 overall. Picking up Seamus Davy Fitzpatrick. Although a great running back, I was very surprised and shocked by this pick, mainly because I felt like Seamus Davy Fitzpatrick had a chance to have a career really somewhere else. And the running backs that the Bulldogs have, he's already got youth and he already has depth. And so that's what really shocked me in a sense. I know he's going to find a way to use him regardless, but yeah, man. Again, that pick kind of puts me in the same situation, kind of like with the Miners, where something is forced, and now you have to play as somebody who's not necessarily ready at the moment for the position at an earlier time, which is going to impact the team in some way. So, like, that's kind of my gripe when it came to the Bulldogs selection with that player. Going there. Cornerback, they ended up getting Brendan Means, 69 overall, not bad. Jaheim Devontae, user wide receiver. They need a receiver because their guys are aging out. Stanley Whitehead. They don't have Saul Leckie, I don't believe, no more. If he is there, he's not. He's old. So, yeah, not bad. You get a C minus here. Josh Burton with the 65 and D tackle, which was Mr. Irrelevant, Matt Waddle. I think it's Waddell, since we've got the L's like that. So Waddell from Wisconsin. And then at 27, it's the St. Louis Aviators, able to hit big with 75 overall offensive tackle to help on the blind side of now Kyle Bain with DJ Taylor. I believe he's from Maryland, not Maryland, Miami. Then they ended up getting with their second overall pick. I ended up selecting Shamir Williams mainly because like Aviators didn't have too many great pick selections, and I just saw old boy in the chat screaming for him, man. Christian, he was just like, man, get my boy Shamir. Get my boy Shamir in there, man. And I was just like, you know what? They kind of do need some receivers, especially a user. So I was like, yeah, let me get Shamir in here, man. So I guess I give a shout out to Christian for getting Shamir on the team because I was probably going to go elsewhere. But and it's not bad. It wasn't bad picking up Shamir Williams. I think he's going to be pretty good there. I know he would have wished he had Marquise Washington throwing to him, but at the end of the day, he's a good pickup too. Ended up getting depth. They barely had any corners out there, so Jeff Hendricks, Jelani Thurston from Texas, getting those two corners at a 67 overall. Got a good wide receiver and Eric Estrada from Georgia. He made some big catches and big plays. He's got some speed on him at a 68. So adding to a user receiver and a good generic, getting some depth there. That was good. And then getting some depth at the safety position. Strong safety picking up Alex Good. So yeah, C minus for the Aviators. At 28, we have the Atlanta Thunderbirds now. And absolutely love the fact they were able to get Keyshawn Taylor. I'm gonna be honest, I was looking at certain situations, and of course, for me picking for CPU teams, it doesn't matter if I want a certain player for a certain team. If it's a need for another team and they got the pick, I'm gonna take it. But I didn't see the only concerns I had with Keyshawn Taylor getting picked up was from a user. I thought I was looking to see. I was like, man, I'm not quite sure if a user is going to pick. And I'm not quite sure if Keyshawn Taylor is going to fall in the second round to the Thunderbirds. So I was a little bit worried about that because I knew he wouldn't be picked up by a CPU team at that point. But I knew that there were some users picking up some receivers or could have. And I actually was about to trade away that pick and get Pablo Frederick. So we was looking at trying to make a move and trying to get that to happen. But then it fell through and ended up being a good thing because Keyshawn Taylor, 1 year receiver out of Georgia, sure hands wide receiver, made some great catches. And he's going to be a good wide receiver with time to develop to help build up for the future of the Atlanta Thunderbirds. So that was the best pick by far that they got. Everyone else was just what they could manage to get. Offensive tackle got BJ Cox at 69, not bad, but got him, got a defensive end, and Tremaine Henderson needed some defensive end help because Isaiah Ingram, he's about to get touch 30 now. He's getting close to the end of his contract too. Not sure if he'll be able to be a guy based off of their contracts to even be able to get re-signed. So, looking for a defensive end of the future. Unfortunately, not a user, but just somebody who can at least touch 70 by the end of the year, a little bit higher than that. Got a backup quarterback in Mitchell Grant, who was not a part of the college series, but they needed that because they only had LC3 on the team, and they needed a cornerback. But at the time in which they could pick cornerback, it was a need for them. But this was the best really they could do, and they could make splashes in other areas. So Tracy Choice was the next best guy, and got an outside linebacker because they needed a linebacker depth, and they got Brian Matthews. So really a lot of all projects except for Keyshawn Taylor. He's going to work on himself, I'm sure, and be able to play eventually soon. We know London Lions, aging wide receivers, 33, 34 years old right now. So he'll definitely have an opportunity to play in the future. He just got to focus on development at this point. And we get to 29, and it goes to the Mexico City Diablos, getting a D plus. They really didn't have too many good picks. Ended up getting a good outside linebacker though, and Mike Bacon from Oklahoma, 70 overall. Got a offensive guard, Mitchell Donahue from West Virginia, Rudy Carmichael from Oklahoma State, Lance Henry. I believe Henry was from, I'm kind of blanking on that. Might be Georgia or it might be Oregon, something like that. I know it's one of those. I know Juan Mency though came from Miami, and he's a speed guy, so they were able to get a nice speed guy there. Who knows, maybe a kick return or something like that for him. But yeah, not really any big splashes here for the Mexico City Diablos. It's Clemson. Yeah, Clemson. That's what it is. Yeah, Clemson. And we get down to the last three teams who I don't think had the best of drafts in terms of, again, it doesn't mean that they had a poor draft because some teams had to make do with what they had to pick from. But I just feel like, just they just didn't get those impact players. That's just really what it came down to for these last couple of guys. The Brooklyn Bulls end up getting a D at, oh, why is he coming in at 32? Well, I guess you guys know what the dead last team is. Might as well go over this. Wow, way to ruin it. Oh, well, I guess we'll save them for last. I'll dive into that. 30th is the Houston Voyagers. Of course, they didn't have the greatest of pick selections, but did pretty decent. But it really didn't make too much splash. The pick I liked the most was definitely JT Hyde, and he needed to get some defensive ends too, which he got with Hyde and Bryce Holt, and a defensive tackle because guys were on the tail end of their contracts. So he did pretty good there. Getting JT Hyde, got Jason Waters, Junior Shepard, Sam Ainsworth, and Lindsey Beckton. He needs some wide receivers too, just to add to that depth over there. And all those getting hit on a 67 and a 66 with Bryce Holt. So just mainly, just worked with what he could, so really couldn't hit big on any of those. I still think that JTI was a pretty solid selection though, but he's definitely still a project. He said crushed. Uh, yeah, we already know that team is talented, and I messed up on this because it says he's an 80 overall team. That's definitely not correct. Uh, I don't have my franchise up right now to be able to check that, but before I post this, I got to make sure I correct that. Um, and coming at 31, the Toronto Huskies, they were shot on picks, and the main reason why is because, I mean, look at what they were able to accomplish last year. They were able to acquire some very good players, and they had to trade away their early picks and to do so, to try to make that Relocation Bowl run. and they were able to get Cal Battaglia, which was their best player on that defensive end, uh, defensive line position, 70 overall. Got a strong safety in Dylan Holloway. Micah Jones was a very solid wide receiver, very tall, and got some really good speed and size on him. So that's a sleeper wide receiver that kind of resembles the wide receiver they got out there right now, Tyrese Maxwell, who is 6'5" and he can move. So Micah Jones could be the future guy that has that same build and structure. And they had two running backs on the squad, and so they just ended up just going out getting two running backs for us. You know what I'm saying? We already know with the running back, blanking on his name, blanking on a lot of names, but Corey Leonidas, yeah, Corey Leonidas. He's a beast. And they got another backup running back who was good. He played for Wisconsin a couple years back, but ended up getting Tremaine Banks and Torrey Truman. One of those guys more than likely going to be on the practice squad, but some solid guys, just for depth, just in case of injuries, stuff like that. So couldn't really do too much, but did what they could. Gets a D, ranked 31st. And dead last, unfortunately, goes out there to Doug Baker with his draft pick. Guy only had 3 draft picks, though, so can't bash him too much, but couldn't really do too much with 3 draft picks. He gets a D, and good thing he avoids a D minus or an F because, ends up getting a solid tight end in Clint Holcomb, which was the best tight end out of the draft. So got the best tight end out the draft in the 76 overall out of Miami, and ended up getting a good offensive tackle, Nazir Bellamy. I think he was from South Carolina, and then Jaquan Lawton, cornerback, I think from Ohio State at a 68. So those are the draft grades, man. Again, just going to fix up a couple things I seen wrong on some of the cards. I think the only thing I seen wrong was that I didn't have a Voyagers rating in there for their team. But that is it, man. Draft grades are official. Yeah, 3 picks, man. Draft grades are official, and that was my grading and rankings of the RFL drafts, the RFL teams, and how they did in the draft. So with that being said, man, that is all I believe that I have. Oh yeah, with that, I guess let's talk about let's pull those up. Well, I guess it's a lot of cards, so let's talk about. Let me get you guys predictions. Who do you guys think will be the offensive and defensive rookies of the year for the NRC and the ARC? I haven't looked at the chat really all ever since I was going through and explaining and breaking down those draft rankings and grades, but now that I can look at you guys, see what you guys are saying there fully, I want to know, who do you guys think has the shot of being offensive rookie of the year this year and defensive rookie of the year? Baker says 87. Okay, I'm gonna make sure to add that. Thunderbirds winning it all. Jet SC cards. Try to pick up where y'all left off last season. NRC me. Ronnie Goins says him and the Sandman and Austin Sanders. Jordan Granger for officer. I feel the same way. I feel like Jordan Granger, since he'll be starting at the quarterback position for the Lumberjacks, I feel like he's got a really good chance to win Offensive Rookie of the Year in the NRC. Let's see what else we got going on here. What about Elijah Walker for the Snowhawks, man? He could potentially win NRC Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm just about to start going through some teams. Just let me turn all these on. Yeah, turn all these on right now. Approaching 2 hours on the pod, man. So yeah, I had fun tonight, man. Appreciate y'all boys, all the support, all you guys showing out, man, the donations and everything today, man. Much appreciated. Season coming up soon, boys. It's about to be lit. That's all I could say. It's about to be lit. Still working on getting these up. All right, I think I got everything. Simmons is a selection here for Frankie. Simmons has all of them reloads, a boost. That's a good one. Garrett Evans saying himself for defensive rookie of the year. There's a good chance for that. Eddie Champ. I doubt a tight end's gonna win the offensive player of the year. I appreciate it, Mac. Hey, you know I do it for the community, man. Love what I do, man. Love the support that I get from you guys. Let's go look at Frankie. What do you got here? Middle linebackers definitely. Well, I don't think Colo will be. These guys will be playing no middle linebacker spots. So yeah, I can see Michael Simmons being a guy. Let's see. Mm, I'm just looking around through these. Yeah, I really feel like Jordan Granger. My pick for offensive rookie of the year for the NRC will be Jordan Granger. Um, ARC offensive rookie of the year could be Michael Simmons too, though, man. Um, was Quintana, he ball out, man. He's active. Good chance he could be ARC defensive rookie of the year. Uh, if he's able to, ball and get a bunch of sacks on quarterbacks. Uh, Another guy, Tevin Corbett. Sleeping, I forgot about him. Tevin Corbett now is now him with Jabri Jackson and that speed and stuff. That's going. He can make some plays, and at the slot, if he's really burning it up, that dude could see him making a push. But again, in the NRC with Jordan Granger, I think Jordan Granger is going to take that over him. So uh, Dylan Lewis could be a guy. Dylan Lewis could be a guy. He said Taro Sheffield got a chance. Yeah, he got a shot too. Brock Frederick, yeah, I forgot about Brock. I don't know. I forget about Brock Frederick. Brock Frederick definitely's got a shot to be defensive rookie of the year, playing that outside linebacker position. Which most likely he'll be playing sub too, starting at that. With the guys, whenever they're not in a base package playing outside. So yeah, Dylan Lewis and Brock Frederick, I could see those two definitely going to war, trying to get that award along with Garrett Evans. Even Stephen King, don't forget Stephen King's on the Crusaders too. And with that defense, not being as good as it is, he'll probably be on on defense making a lot of tackles this year. So he racks up a lot of big impact plays. I can see that. I'm just quickly scrolling through. Hold on, let me see. Nah, Darius Donald, I think, is gonna have a year with the Monarchs though. Ward's gonna be pretty good there, man. Yeah, Ajon's gonna be pretty solid. And I know Washington's gonna be splitting those carries. Yeah, I think right now that's just my Eddie Cham. I don't feel any of those guys would probably do that from the Bulldogs. They already got those guys. Uh, yeah, that's kind of my takes. I'm kind of up in the air with ARC a little bit. Yeah, because these weren't good draft picks, uh, draft grades anyway for those guys. So I'll just leave that alone. Going through the rest, I went through. So yeah, I guess right now we have reached the end of the podcast, man. About to touch 2 hours, but it just turned to 26. So 4 minutes for open questions, guys. You guys got any questions for me on anything? Feel free to ask, man. I'm very excited about this season, man. Tomorrow I'm gonna be going hard. trying to get other stuff done, and yeah, I'm trying to work on that schedule, trying to get the whole full schedule mapped out early and all that. Dev traits. I was working on them, but because I was getting help with Amari on contracts for rookies, the changes I made for devs um, weren't on weren't saved because he had a different file and I forgot about that. So there's everyone will have devs and everyone will know the devs and stars and stuff like that soon. But I do have a good clear idea of who I'm gonna have, a star dev and all that other stuff. And the good thing about it is I can give out a lot more devs now based than I thought, because what I'm doing is I'm going to have the game reset everything at the end of the season. So instead of me having to make the cuts to cut down the devs to fit the limit that Madden has, I'm just allowing guys to rock out with what I see fit and what they had in a sense, unless they didn't have that good of a season. And then after that, Madden's going to be the one to do the cut down at the end of the season and regress everybody who needs to lose their dev if they didn't perform well. So it's going to be a lot of impact players still out there on that field, but it'll get cut down drastically based on performance at the end of the year. All right, so let's go into questions. I have a question. You tired yet? Oh, I'm definitely tired. I know you guys could probably see my eyes being low, but I just want to make sure I got through everything. Said, when is the file going to drop to see our attributes? I'm planning on dropping that file, like I said, for you guys when I drop and release the RFL mod to the public. So you guys will have access to that. I'm planning on the end of this month and January 31st. Coaches already got access to that, so if you got a coach, those guys can show you what your stuff is. But for you to be able to have access to it, for one, you gotta have PC and you have to have Madden. I thought it was where you didn't have to have Madden as long as you had the franchise file, it would open up anyway, but it didn't work that way. So statistics are only going to be viewable through PC, unfortunately, for the year. But of course, through the RFL podcast and everything that we do, you're going to be caught up on a lot of that stuff anyway throughout the season, because I'll be hitting on all that. Say, can you get into more details about the field/stadiums you mentioned before? Yeah, so we've got all the design, the edge walls, the stadiums, the field, every aspect that has NFL stuff in it. We've pretty much gotten rid of and replaced with RFL stuff, and are looking to there's some stuff that we're still trying to find where those are to take them out. So when the mod does drop to the public for you guys to use, you might catch some stuff like with NFL team logos and stuff on it. But at the end of the day, majority of everything is replaced with RFL stuff. So the mod looks great, man. The coaches, they already have seen it, man, and they've already been saying like, yo, this is fire. So I can't wait to drop it to the public. But I want to make sure I got everything in place, and then that pretty much that RFL start today mod thing. Once I put that out there to the public and stuff like that, I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to play that and use that, because it's almost pretty much like an RFL video game, man. That's what's dope about it. It's like we pretty much got our own game just about. Then you'll be able to play with our players through the franchise, that is, because I don't have to play now. Because at the time when Modern was available, they didn't have that capable to where you could edit a play now kind of roster. So I think, unfortunately, I might have to build the RFL teams next year too, which sucks. I thought this would be the last time I'd have to do it, but it'll be good. I mean, we get through it every year. He said, for preseason starters able to sit week 2 and week 3, but play week 1. Yeah, so I remember we talked about that. Yeah, so everyone has to play week 1 in a sense. Yeah, everyone has to play week 1, and then week 2 I can have it where I need to still check into that, because I'm not 100% sure if you can give a person an injury. But for coaches, just so you guys know this, if there's a player you absolutely do not want to play after week 1 of the preseason for the preseason, and you want to avoid that injury for that guy, then if I am able to assign an injury to a player during that time to keep them off the field, I will do that if that's capable. I still need to look and see if that's possible. But if it is, and you guys are interested in making sure that your guy does not touch the field, then yeah, make sure to do that and let me know. Uh, he said when the season starts, you can see everything though. Yep. So how impressed have you been with the game so far in the mod practices? I've been great. I mean, we're still working on sliders. I told guys we're not using the base Madden because the base Madden is stuff that Sabo's mod, which we'll be using and other things, uh, can do better. And so from from that and giving the best overall experience to the guys who will be watching the games, like there's going to be a lot of stuff we can like do that's going to make the gameplay way better. But I'm still fine tuning it. We're going to be on all Madden, that's one thing for sure. But I'm still tweaking sliders with the Sabo mod to make sure that it's realistic and suitable for the RFL. That's where I'm at right now with that, but nothing in stone except for the fact that we are for sure going to be on all Madden, at least for now. You guys already know we've been following the RFL season, or at least in the Discord. Sliders are not officially set, and I always disagree with people who think that you got to keep the set the same throughout the entire year, because it's impossible just about. You got a game that's frequently getting updated. If you keep everything the same, it will essentially be different because of the changes they made. So you have to go with the times and try to find something that gives you kind of that same similar experience based off the slider set that you had. There is going to be a time, I'm sure, where we're going to have just cruise through and everything's going to be good and we just work right through that. But when updates and stuff happens, you don't want to have poor gameplay out there because you didn't change certain aspects of the games. And so like that'll be a frequent thing. That always happens pretty much in the RFL, where things will change slider wise, but it's really just to try to get it to the same kind of gameplay that is realistic and my viewpoint for the league. All right, so I know I was supposed to get out of here, but guys got some questions, man. So I'm gonna go ahead and answer them. He said, "I hope ESJ because I want to play a lot before I ship out." Says, "Can you leak us how many drafted guys have dev traits?" Nope. You guys will see that. Your coaches will have access to that. Pretty soon. I'm about to drop the updated file. They don't have the devs on them because I did the devs, but again, like I had Amari working on a file, but it was separate from what I was doing, and I forgot. Oh man, I need his stuff first before I did this. So devs aren't there. So I'll drop a file today for you guys, and tomorrow I will I will look to try to get that done and get the devs to everybody else who I'm planning to give it to. Here's a question: with all the teams in one file, how many primetime games will be added a week? Like, will you and Zeke split games, or will it just be? Well, Zeke's occupied with the college series, so he won't be involved in the RFL at all because he's got to do that. Maybe he'll get involved after the college series ends because that's going to be much sooner than when the RFL season ends. So he might get involved there, and actually most likely will, because I mean the college series, that's when I kind of pick up with him on that in the second half of the year after the RFL season's over. I won't be doing as much work. I'll just be like pretty much getting some content on this channel with extra games that he can't stream that are big on that new college football game. So that way both channels are just growing and stuff like that. Don't want to have the RFL channel be stagnant with no content. So college series content will still be on the RFL channel after the RFL season. But yeah, there's going to be a total of 4 primetime games in which I'll call, and a max amount of games you can have within a week is 16. And so if we have that, that means at most there will be 12 primetime games, the premier games going on on Sundays. And of course, I reserve that because of the merger. I got the RFL, like the NFL, our primetime games where we have our game day with multiple games that runs on Sunday. And for him, which he's already following the method for the College Series channel, that's going on Saturdays. And for anybody who's new, wants to keep up with what's going on in the college world, go ahead, search up RFL College Series. It's a different YouTube channel with over 1K subscribers now on it. Make sure to subscribe to that so that way you can, check in on the college series and see what's going on with potential prospects. All right. So I got to answer that question. So any openings next season? Hey Tim, so when you say any openings, it depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking to be a player? Are you looking to coach? Are you looking to own? There's a couple opportunities now in the league with this new expansion. Or this new era, I might as well say. I said don't want to sound biased. I'm changing all my guys, kickers, and punters to make sure they don't touch the field. In all honesty, oh, that's a good way to avoid it as well. Changing them to kickers. In all honesty, I think Garrett Evans could win Defensive Rookie of the Year. Okay. Austin Sanders or Darius Donald, co-Defensive Rookie of the Year, says Mac. Sacks and TFLs weigh a lot. Yep. So our starters week 1 in the preseason. So all starters week 1. Yeah, because, that's, you don't want to take away from the hype of the RFL season. I know it's preseason, but the preseason is back, and guys want to see the big name guys, the main guys for those teams, at least for the first quarter. So I know it's an injury hazard, but like for promotion for the right reasons of the RFL, like everyone has to play week 1 that are starters. So after that, I'm okay with if you're trying to sit guys out completely. Week 2 and 3, you can do that. But week 1, the hype is there. I want those guys on the field. And like I say, everyone's got a risk, even with the CPU teams, man. Like at the end of the day, like they everyone's got to be out there. Everyone, people want to see those players first week. If they just come in and there's a bunch of random guys first week, they just like, oh, what's going on here? There's no hype really behind it. It says, so can we see a draft history or rankings for College Series prospects in the next release? Well, if you are a player or anything of the RFL or a part of the RFL Discord, which you can only be if you are a player or a staff member, you have to, we have draft history already in the RFL. I've updated that. I do have to get the old ones, see if that's even possible for like the first ever RFL draft and stuff like that. I know I got the videos and stuff on it, but yeah, all the way from season 5's draft up to now, we have that updated with every single player that's been drafted and what round they were drafted in the Discord. But that is not public to everyone. I'm looking at, of course, gotta work more and just wait till the staff and everything builds up more so we can get people to work on the website to put that type of information on the website. So stuff like that could come in the future. Love the pro feeling on Sunday game. Yeah, that's gonna be fire, man. So when the college series ends, do we get a Saturday night primetime game added? Yeah, so when the college series ends, I could do that. The college series ends, we could get games going on Saturday to split up the premiere day and a primetime game, which will give us an extra game. So I could do that. And I'm going to answer these last few questions here. Everybody's saying defensive rookie of the year. Appreciate everyone saying defense. Oh, okay, yeah. Bet. Good job. Great job, Smitty. Appreciate that, Leo. Can't wait for the season. Yeah, it's going to be great, man. I'm excited. Him in Black Knight's uniform, kind of fire. Yeah, Gino do look fire, that Black Knight's uniform, though, man. Like, I was just like, man, this is crazy seeing him somewhere else. Same with Marquise Washington. But it's going to be It's gonna be awesome, man. Great season on the way, boys. It's been a great podcast. Season is 8 days away, boys. 8 days. That's it, though, for me. It's your boy Smitty, RFL Commissioner and play-by-play commentator. And I'll see you guys next time.